All right, we are live. Hi, everyone, for the third time today. Last session, super excited. This one is going way quicker than the 3.0, the 24-hour summit that we did. So this is a piece of cake. So my name is Naomi Hartle. I'm at Miss Hartle on Twitter. You can see that in my lower third there if you want to check out what's going on. Use hashtag FZED Summit if you want to see just what's going on and who's all participating. It's been pretty crazy. We've had 43 people from 43 different countries sign up, RSVP. It's been amazing. I mean, so cool. So if there are any tech issues and we jump out for some reason, stay in the tozzle and we will put a new video in there as soon as possible. And I see everybody saying where they're from, so that is great. I appreciate that. All right, so I'm going to introduce Erin, and then I'm going to stop talking. So Erin Beighle holds a PhD from Arizona State University, specializing in physical education and physical activity for youth. He is currently a faculty member in the Department of Kinesiology and Health Promotion at the University of Kentucky. Dr. Beighle has worked with school districts, recreation programs, and youth sport organizations across the country in their efforts to maximize physical activity experiences and promote youth to be physically active for a lifetime. He is the author and co-author of more than 75 research-based and practical articles. In addition, through his writings, speaking, trainings, and training development work, he has been a leading advocate for comprehensive school physical activity programs. He is also a co-author of 6 books, Promoting Physical Activity and Health in the Classroom, Pedometer Power 2nd edition, Dynamic Physical Education for Elementary School Children, 16, 17, and 18th editions. All right, Erin, it's up to you.
All right, thanks. Those introductions are always great, you know. Thank you all for joining me. This is exciting, and I'm excited to be a part of this. And just a couple of housekeeping things. I apologize. I live in a part of the world where it's 50 degrees in the morning on Tuesday, and by afternoon it's 20 degrees. So once every year for about 6 months, I sound like this. So I apologize for that. I have a little bit of a cough. But before I forget, I want to thank the FZED Summit team and Naomi and the rest of the group for putting this on. I think this is a great opportunity and a great time to share. Please go to Tozzle and add questions. I'm going to do my best to go back and forth. If Naomi sees some questions that are poignant, she'll jump in as well. If not, I have time at the end that I'll definitely have time to get to some questions. I'll make this relatively short, and then we'll open up for questions. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we'll get rolling. All right, so the topic here I'm going to talk about is the multi-activity model, and why I put the whole really there is there's some I guess connotation. There's some I'm not real sure what the whole history of it is, that the multi-activity model is awful and is the lazy teacher model and we shouldn't be using it. And I'm going to hopefully dispel some of that and talk about how it fits in and why I think it's one of the more powerful, because I think we can use other models, and I'll talk about that in depth as we go. So before I get started, I want to thank them. They're here today. Grandma and Grandpa are here as well. So my estrogen entourage, these are our 4 girls. One just turned 10, but we have 2 9-year-olds, 2 10-year-olds, I guess, technically, and 2 7-year-olds. So they keep me on my toes, and I grew up with all brothers. So it's an interesting world. So as soon as I get done with this, I get to go spend the rest of the weekend with these 5 beauties. I want to talk a little bit about what is physical education, because as we're going to get into what a model is and why I think the multi-activity model can work, I think it's important first to look at what is physical education. And again, these are all terms that most people, if you read all 3 of these, they're not much different. Skills, one calls it confidence, one calls it dispositions, one calls it attitudes. Technically, you could get into debate over whether those are the same term or not. But for our purposes and what I want to talk about today, what I think we're trying to do in PE is to provide students with the skills, knowledge, and attitude to be active for a lifetime. So what most people call that is physical literacy now. It's up to you, whether you like the term physical literacy or you don't. I'm torn. Sometimes I like it, sometimes I don't. I think it's somewhat of a unifying term that pushes the field forward. And within that, the pieces of the puzzle for physical literacy are physical activity, attitude, knowledge, fitness, and skills. And then there's other things on here. I've presented enough that I hear other things that people say, oh, that don't fit. I have something I think is important and it doesn't fit. So, but in general, this is the piece, this is the puzzle we're trying to put together. And by the time our students leave us, we want that entire puzzle to be put together. And so we have to make decisions on how do we do this? How do we promote physical activity? Excuse me. So one of the approaches that I've looked at recently or lately is this whole idea of how do we do this? If we're going to promote physical activity, I think we need to look at what adults do for physical activity. And there was a study that came out recently, this Cleveland, 2011, so it's not really recently, but there are others that support this. The exposure to a variety of physical activities is one of the things that it relates to how active kids are in adulthood. And my contention is, where can students be exposed to a variety of activities? Well, obviously we have them and we can do that. The other issue, and this is probably another presentation, but I took the chance and put 2 bullets in here, then maybe it'll bring up some questions. But do skills and fitness predict future physical activity? Some have argued, and I don't think the evidence is real strong. The reason I don't think the evidence is real strong about skills and physical activity, because if you look at the activities that adults engage in, at least in the US, it's walking, jogging, gardening is one of them. When's the last time you saw gardening in PE? And you can argue it needs to be there. So do they predict physical activity? Yeah, maybe, maybe not. And I don't think the evidence is very strong. And then the next step to that is, if that is the case, can we even get kids skilled in PE and get them fit in PE? Again, totally different presentation, but I know we can't get kids fit in PE. If we had them daily, maybe in middle school and high school. Getting skilled is a different ballgame as well, and you have to determine what are the skills. But what I'm not saying, please don't hear me saying that fitness and skills are not important. I write a curriculum. There are lots of curricula out there that talk about that emphasize fitness and emphasize skills. That's not my point. My point is, how do we best get kids to be active, and what do we want to hold ourselves accountable for in PE? Do we want to say we're going to get kids fit? And do we want to say we're going to get them skilled? There's not a lot of evidence that physical education, there's evidence you can get kids skilled, but there's not a lot of evidence you can get kids skilled in physical education. It's just not there. And so one of the other things that I've looked at related to this, how do we do this, is an acronym called PRAISE. And what this acronym stands for is perceived competence, relatedness, autonomy, individuality, social support, and enjoyment. These are, if you look at the literature on theories, achievement goal theory, self-determination theory, and in the sports psychology, exercise psychology world, these are the components. Now, I will tell you how this came about. The individuality is not necessarily, but pairs just didn't sound nearly as good as praise, so I had to find something to put an I into the acronym. But we have to give kids a perceived competence. They have to perceive themselves as being good. That means we have to give them successful experiences. We have to get them to connect. Lots of ways. We can connect with them as a student. We can get students to connect to students, or we can get them to connect to the activity. We need to provide choices. Again, this is a whole nother presentation as well. I'm just trying to give you some background for a couple of slides coming up. We need to treat kids as individuals and let them know, you know what, you might not like this activity, but you can try it, and you might find another activity you like. We need to provide social support, meaning we need to get families involved in PE. The teachers need to be supportive. And the last thing that it seems like this is a dirty, you can't worry about that in PE. We need to make them have fun. We need to show them that physical activity can be fun, because I can get them skilled if you give them to me daily in middle school, and I can get them active, and I can get them fit, etc. And if they hate every minute of it, I've wasted my time and they've wasted theirs. So I think these are things that we really need to focus on and make sure when we're teaching, are we going back to their perceptions, and are we worried about whether they're feeling like they're competent? Because most of us won't do things that we're not competent at. I mean, again, the example of this was dancing. Unless there's alcohol involved, there's a lot of people that won't dance because of what they're afraid they're being looked at. And I say this, there's not enough bourbon in the state of Kentucky to get me on a dance floor, but I know I need to teach dance, and I need to have kids to have that perception that they're competent. So if that's what we're going to do, then what should an elementary, because we're going back to this whole idea of picking a model. So we're getting there. I'm going to talk about the multi-activity model, but what should elementary programs focus on? First and foremost, I think they need to make it fun. That's why I spent some time on the praise model. We need to focus on the process. If I teach throwing and I use T, elbows, step, and throw, That's what I evaluate kids on, whether they can make a tee, whether they can bend their elbow, whether they step and throw. Right, so it's very much the process, because the process is where I can get kids to have success. Some kids will never learn to throw a ball and hit a target. They never shoot a free throw, and they never throw a frisbee accurately. But they can focus on the process, and I can make them feel successful, which if I can make them feel successful in that, there's a better chance the product will follow, and the product being the ultimate outcome. We also want kids at the elementary level to find out what they like and not like. I mean, again, think about what kindergartners have been exposed to. I mean, I know some of you I follow on Twitter, and I know that you expose your kids to a variety of activities that are a lot of fun, but they're fortunate enough to have you as parents, and they don't have, there are lots of kids out there that aren't exposed to a variety. So we have to let them know what is out there. What kind of fitness activities are there? And fitness activities aren't just mundane, oh, I got to go run on a treadmill. They can be fun and they can be enjoyable, but kids need to find out what they like and don't like. We obviously need to be inclusive. This is one we're getting a lot better. When I first got into the field, we weren't over as good as we are now about this, but making sure all students are included. And then adapting activities to fit students' needs. Again, this is another one, excuse me, that we're getting a lot better at. I always make the argument that all PE is adapted PE, because I've been around. I used to teach team sports and individual sports activities here at UK for our majors, and it got to the point because they wanted us to teach the majors the real rules of some of these activities that we did. I had to go look them up because I taught for so long that I didn't teach the real rules. So we need to make sure we're adapting activities. So that's elementary. What do middle school programs focus on? Well, I think that middle school should have short and varied units, and there's a reason for this. This is a huge time of change and a big major time when they start making their decisions about physical activity. And if we play basketball for 9 weeks and they hate basketball, you can play basketball for 3 weeks and they hate basketball and they're not very good at it, that's a long time to be a failure. And if we can change, I'm not saying you only do 1 week of basketball if you have students for 18 weeks, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But I think we have to come back around to it instead of having long bouts of activity. They're going through growth spurts, their life's changing, they get a new zit every day. And so, there's a lot going on that we need to make sure that when we have them in middle school, that they're having a positive experience. The nice thing, at least when I was teaching, that I thought was fun, is that middle school, you can start to teach some skills and you can start to teach some strategy, and they start to understand that. And as long as it doesn't, get in with their performance too much on performance and that kind of thing, I think this is a fun time to really start teaching that. Again, focusing on success. That's not going to go away. I mean, before I got into this field, I was a personal trainer. Obviously, I wasn't real good at it because I'm doing this today. But one of the things we did with our clients was I didn't focus on success. I focused on all these. I have a master's degree in exercise physiology, so I knew a lot. I need to tell all my clients everything I knew. And I never asked, what do you like? And never made sure they would be feeling successful. So I think this is a long time coming that we need to start focusing on success and making physical activity experiences fun. If you've never read it, I highly encourage you to read a book called No Sweat. It's by Michelle, I might be pronouncing the last name wrong, Seeger, but it talks about it. And one of her clients, and she says many of the clients she's worked with have never had a positive experience in physical activity. I'm a physical educator to my toes, and I love this field, but that's PE's fault that she didn't feel successful, and that she has a client that never had a positive experience in physical activity. Student voice, obviously, we need to listen to students, find out what they like, don't like. It doesn't mean if students come in, you have a student comes in and says, I don't like basketball, you never do basketball again. But you try and find out, get to know your students. This is just quality teaching, but we really need to start focusing on that. And then high school programs, student choice. Different models. I'm going to talk in depth about this when I get to what it could look like with the multi-activity model. But I think students need to have some say in what we do, and they start to understand the how and why. You're never going to convince a sophomore in high school that they need to be active because they might die of a heart attack. That's just not going to happen. But they can start to understand some of this, and you can get into some other variety of teaching. And then they start really finding what they like. I mean, again, this whole process is about finding what they like, K through 12. So we want to make sure they do. And then if you haven't looked up, I encourage you to look up Justin O'Connor and Trent Brown's work down in Australia about preparing kids beyond physical education and preparing them for physical activity. They do a lot of work. It's a combination of some of the things we talked about and some community engagement and really making them, basically preparing kids to be advocates for physical activity. But they can articulate it much better than I can, and I would encourage you to look up their work. So what does this look like in a big grand scheme of things? So this is just kind of a diagram. So this down at the bottom there, as I point to it on my screen, as if you can see me, at the bottom there, it's short units, and that's kindergarten. So they come to us, the bottom is elementary. So they come to us in kindergarten. Kindergartners breathe something different than everyone else. Life is great, la la la, everything's fun, and they don't know anything though. We have to expose them to a variety of activities, therefore shorter units. Then when they get in the middle school, they can start to have goal setting. They can start to understand some of these ideas of strategy, but we still want to minimize failure, so we have short units. And then, an intramural approach could work. Again, one of the things I want to be clear about this, I put this on here and I forgot to put a bullet here. Intramural does not mean team sport. It's just one of these things that we just, at least in the US, that people say, oh, intramurals, that means you're doing basketball and soccer and baseball. No, intramurals can be parkour, intramurals can be frisbee golf, intramurals can be dancing, intramurals can be gymnastics, intramurals can be any of these things when we talk about a variety of activities. And then we get into grades 9 through 12 at the top two. And my point with this being this structured is the bottom point, they don't know anything. At least they leave us with a couple activities that they might want to be active with the rest of their life. And that's kind of what we're trying to do. And the big problem with my whole picture here is that, at least in the US, 9 through 12 rarely happens. 7 through 8 happens sometimes. And it's just really hard for a freshman in high school to make a decision. That's why I think it's important, this whole preparation, to be an advocate for physical activity and to be active as well. Again, I encourage you to go to the work of Justin and Trent for that. So again, I'm just laying my background. You have to make your decisions on what you think as well. But how do you select a model? If this multi-activity model works, Beighle, what are you talking about here? Why did you pick that? So I had a conversation, fortunate enough, down at the Peak Conference in Atlanta. I had a conversation with Mike Metzler, and I know enough about models to be dangerous, basically, I found out. But what I found out from him is a model and instructional strategies have to be aligned with the program's major goals. So I just told you what my program's major goals are. And the ultimate intent is the second, the sub bullet of the second bullet says is expose them to a variety of activities, because I think that if we expose them to a variety of enjoyable activities with a variety of teaching strategies, that seems to me makes sense. The exposure seems to make sense to me. I don't want to take kids. I'm not going to take a kid. I'm not going to make them competent and great at tennis. It's just not going to happen in PE, because I want to expose them. I could focus just on tennis and to have 5% or 10% of my kids like tennis, then I serve 10% and not the others. Whereas I can do a variety of activities and promote physical activity, turn them on that they'll say, I want to go play tennis outside of PE. I think one of the things we don't do well in PE is we don't tell kids, look, we're doing tennis. There's tennis courts a block and a half from here. Go play tennis there. This is great. We don't promote that activity outside well enough. So that's kind of a general one slide, how you pick a model. And again, why I share that is because it has to be aligned with your goals. And I've shared what my goals are. That's why I think this multi-activity model fits. So what is this multi-activity model? Finally, 20 minutes into this, I'm finally talking about it. But it's characterized by a variety of activities, broad scope. You're going to cover a wide variety of things. And units will vary from a day to a few days, or a few weeks, sorry. Days, I know of a colleague in Arizona that did a circus. He called it a circus unit, and it was 2 days for high school. And they did, he bounced around and did it several times throughout the year, but they would have unicycling and, different tricks on a balance beam and those types of things. And those, I'm not sure what they're called, the hippie sticks that you bounce the feather back and forth, those types of things. At least from my perspective, and I've looked around and read some things, it's one of the most common approaches, but I think it allows, one of the nice things about it is allows for a variety of teaching strategies. Now, I think most models allow for a variety of teaching strategies, so I don't want to mislead here, but you can see this continuum I have here: direct task, individual, inquiry, problem solving, free exploration. Again, this continues as Mostyn's work, and it just relates to total control with direct teaching, to task where it's a little less control of the teacher, all the way to the end where it's free exploration, where the student has most, if not all, the control of what's done during the lesson or during parts of the lesson. So what's so good about this? As I've addressed a little bit, I think there's some content flexibility that I think is great for a teacher. You don't have to worry, I'm only going to do TGFU, and at least I've talked to a couple of people that are TGFU advocates, and that's not what they advocate either. They want a variety of models. It allows you to be flexible as a teacher. Again, this is the biggie for me. Flexibility is teaching, meaning I can use a variety of teaching strategies all within one lesson. Again, most models allow for that. Expose students to more activities. I think this is one that's kind of unique. I'm not spending 4 weeks on volleyball or 4 weeks on, 4 weeks on badminton or that kind of thing. And then I think the nice thing about this model is that it allows for the integration of other models. I look at some of the work that I've done, and I would say that the curriculum model that I'm using is an multi-activity model. But I encourage teachers, if you're doing this way of teaching, when you get to your soccer, if you want to do TGFU with soccer, great, do it. Or if you're doing tennis and you want to do a sport ed model with tennis, great, do it. Or sport ed model with something else you're doing. Or if you want to do fitness education, or if you want to do adventure education for this and use a adventure education model with that approach, great. And then you bounce from different models. And again, maybe I'm mixing up this idea, but I think the idea here is that we have a lot of models that are great models that we can use. And if you use the multi-activity model, you have a chance to get a variety of models within your unit. Because if you do a unit, or you do a model where you do 3 weeks of volleyball and 3 weeks of tennis and 3 weeks of badminton, you only have a chance of 3 different, and I think the variety is important. Why am I thinking that for here? Oh. So what's bad about this? I've dug around on this, and I've found some writing and some other, I guess they're blogs more or less, that suggest that when you do the multi-activity model, you have to have extensive expertise. And my perspective on this is, if we say that you have to be an expert in tennis to teach tennis, and you have to be an expert in gymnastics to teach gymnastics, and you have to be an expert in dance to teach dance, all that does is narrow the teacher's curriculum. And all that does is result in a teacher being teacher-centered as opposed to student-centered. And I know I was part of a PE program when I was in school that I've been to school in Ohio, and we did football. We didn't have football at our school. The PE teacher played football at Ohio State. So we had football, we played basketball, and we did track and field. And that's all we did. And that was what the teacher knew. And so that was his expertise, and that's what he focused on, and that didn't do anything to variety. I don't do any of those activities now. Another issue that's been brought up is that it's abused by roll out the ball, but I would argue all models can be abused with roll out the ball. I've seen teachers that say, oh yeah, I'm doing sport ed, and they just let kids play games. Well, that's not sport ed. And that's the couch. They know, these teachers knew when I asked questions, they knew about sport ed, but they weren't really using it. That's not what they were doing. Limited in skill development. Yeah, I think there's some of that, but if you look at our history, I don't think we have much data that PE is going to get kids much more skilled, just because of the time we have them, etc. And this goes back to again, my philosophy is an inch deep, a mile wide, probably more than an inch, but not a mile wide and an inch deep. Actually, I want to be a mile wide and not real deep. And that's just how I have the same thing written there twice. I just noticed. But and others have said, well, you're not going to get kids very fit. Well, we're not going to get people very fit. I mean, public health has pushed for that. That's just not as much of an issue. And again, that's for another presentation. But I think that's something that these are just some of the downsides of what folks have concentrated on. So what would this look like in a PE class? So I'm going through the elementary, middle, and high school, or junior high, whatever you have. So this is just 6 weeks, the first 6 weeks of a year, what it could look like. Again, this is just, some of these are random, some of these are there intentionally. For example, if you look down to lesson focus in week 3, it's throwing skills. So you go throwing, and some would say, well, yeah, you're going to cover week 3 and you get back to it. Maybe week 10, 15, you might get to throwing again. But if you look down at the introductory activity, that first column under week 6, is yarn ball exploration and throwing. Well, that's getting back to that, and I'm going to talk about looping and spiraling and things later. For example, individual jump ropes is done week 6. Well, the reason it's done week 6 is because it's going to show up as a fitness activity later, and it might show up again as a lesson focus later. So we're not getting it just one time, but we are doing a variety of activities. These are just, again, I have this column on the weeks. If you have them daily, it's different if you have them weekly, once a week, or some of you might be in a program where you have them every day for a week and then you don't see them for 4 weeks. And this is just meant to kind of give you an idea of what this could look like. And again, the fitness activity that is designed to expose students to a variety of fun ways to be active and fun ways to endure intense activity. We're not trying to get kids fit there. That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to expose them to a variety of activities to show them that fitness doesn't have, again, there's fun ways to do fitness, basically. And then you can also see down here, so I had the throwing skills on week 3, and then week 5, the game is messy backyard, because gymnastics, you could have gymnastics games. I usually don't have a gymnastics game. I will have a game that will tie in some other skills. So within these first 6 weeks, the kids will be exposed to throwing at least 3 times. So again, that's just a rough, and I can clarify if you have questions about that as we go. Then the middle school. This one, just to note, on the left is days. So I started to do weeks, and I thought, well, I don't know how. Everybody's got a different program in middle school and high school. So you can see it's days 1 through 8, and then 9 through 19 are just nothing. I want to make some points here, and then 20 through 22 could be different things. But you can see, again, there's some time spent on orientation. But this fundamental skill review, that's just for us as teachers to find out, where the heck are they? Do I have kids that can throw, or do I need to go back with throwing? And then you can see some of the activities that come through here. For example, orienteering is done day 7 and 8. And then over here on the game on day 21, we do orienteering frisbee golf. Again, basically kids have to shoot a bearing, and that's how they find the goals. There's no numbers on the holes. These are just a variety of ways that you can mix and match and get back to things and not just expose them to them one time. This week 8, equipment exploration frisbee. All that is I know I'm going to be teaching it at week 20. I want to see if these kids can throw a frisbee, and that's going to help me decide whether I need to do 1 day, 2 days. I mean, again, the nice part about this flexibility is I can say, you know what, I can do 3 days, because they don't have a clue what they're doing today. And then you get down to this, and in week 22 you do rhythms, and you could do a rhythm game related to rhythms if you want, but I didn't, because I'm going to do badminton royal court, and that's basically king of the court, or whatever you want to call it. But you can see that there's a variety of ways to do this, and one that didn't show up here, I knew what I was thinking in my head when I put this together, but it didn't show up. In week 9 through 19, it's somewhere I'd probably do tennis. Well, tennis shows itself back up here on scavenger hunt tennis. And so they would be doing something related to fitness with respect to tennis. So it would be tennis. They might be, you have to run to the baseline, or you have to run to the service court, and you and your group do whatever for X amount of time. All of the fitness stuff I do is based on time. I don't say go do 25 push-ups, because one kid's done before the other, and then you've got a mess. And you have kids that, how long do you have to be told? How long do you have to be the one that never finished push-ups before you realize, fitness is not for me? Whereas, and I can pick the workload, and that's, again, another presentation, but I think there's a variety of things we can do with middle school PE and have it to be a multi-activity model. And again, I hope this has shown a little bit of the idea. I couldn't get it all on one page, but so what does it look like in high school? This is the one that, gosh, there's just so many possibilities here. And this, before I get onto this requires that you have a group of 4 teachers that all want to work together. And for example, you might have one teacher that likes team sports. Great, they're going to teach team sports. And you might have a teacher that likes individual dual. Great, that's what they're going to do. And you might have a teacher that have innovative activities, and they just like to be creative and do all kinds of crazy stuff. Great. And then you have somebody that's real fitness focused. So what happens in the student choice model is the students at the beginning of the year, or beginning of the 9 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever you want to do, pick what they want to do. And so the first time, A through D get their first choice, and then D or E through J get to choose. And they might not get their first choice, but they get one of their choices that they pick. So what this does is, A, it gives them choice. And we know with motivational research, as I talked in praise, that you have to give kids choices and autonomy. It would be like you going to the gym and they say, nah, you get to do the treadmill today. Well, I don't like the treadmill. Well, sorry, that's what you get to do today. And that's, what we're trying to get away from here. So when they come to this and they pick team sports and they say, I want to do this today. Well, you picked it, not me. So this is why you're doing this. And you can look, the innovative one is one I think is fascinating. And these aren't just exclusive to high school. You can do parkour, gardening. Again, gardening is number 2 or 3, depending on the year you look at it, an adult activity, and it never shows up in PE. And, you know, we got pickleball, HIIT training, circuits, Pilates, lots of different things you can do with high school. You hear lots of chaos outside, but lots of things you can do with the student choice model. And then there's other things you can do. I know Chuck Corbin and Greg Welk have a fitness education lab. They have a lab and a classroom and gymnasium approach, which is great. This community awareness and outreach, again, is Justin O'Connor and Trent Brown in Australia. And the first year course is great, but these advanced courses, some of you putting about conditioning is, I agree. I don't know why they do these advanced. We had a student that lost his job. He was the first kid here in Kentucky that lost his job because they hired a strength and conditioning coach for the football team, and he was the PE guy. And that, it kind of chaps me, obviously. And so advanced courses are great if they're not just for athletics, and it's not, who's he have in the class? Oh, he's got all the football players in there. Well, that's not. That just kind of rubs me the wrong way. But I think these advanced classes have a lot of opportunities and a lot of the electives, if you will. I know Maria Cord out in Mesa does an unbelievable job with their program, has waiting lists and can't get enough kids in the program, or has waiting lists to get kids in and can't get them all in, but does a lot of fun stuff. She does parkour, she does HIIT training, she does all kinds of fun stuff that this is what they're going to do the rest of their lives. I mean, how many of us graduated from high school and have never been in a weight room? Not the same weights for everybody, but man, we got to expose people to a variety of activities. Excuse me. So to go along with my random thoughts here, I just got on clip art and found a random picture, and it came up to be a chicken. But organization factors, again, progressions, how you progress, whether you're kindergartners, if you have ninth graders, your weather, where do you put things? Do you put, I know when I was in Arizona, they can't go outside in this fall, or in the fall and in the spring, because it's hot. So they do all their outdoor stuff in the winter. And here in Lexington, we do all the outdoor stuff in the fall or in the spring. Looping, I'm not as familiar with the term looping. I've seen it used several times recently, but spiraling, where it's not just a one and done. You can't just do skipping and never get back to it. And not only letting them skip, but reiterating those cues that you use for skip, and keep doing that over and over. And whether it's, or if it's a forehand in tennis, or if it's a fitness concept, or if it's, you're using pedometers and you want to promote activity, keep going over that content and not just doing a one and done. And obviously facilities are going to impact what you can teach. Sequencing, the rationale, why do you put things where you put them from year to year? If you don't have your kids K through 6 in elementary, I know some people teach 1st, 3rd, and 4th. If they're at a larger school and have more than one teacher, then you have to figure that out and figure out why we're teaching what we're teaching. And I think this whole idea of revisiting concepts is huge. That's why we use a 4-part lesson, so we can make sure we get those different concepts taught. But we have to be able to do that. If we don't, we're just, again, this is where we get into these problems with the multi-activity model. And then I guess kept going. I had random thoughts, and then this spatula thing came up. But balancing your curriculum and depth and breadth. I'm obviously heavier on breadth. I want to expose them to a variety of activities. Some will argue, nope, I want depth. I just don't subscribe to that. And I think that there's plenty of discussion. The beauty of all of this, and I didn't say this earlier with the physical literacy, the beauty of all of this is we're all talking about the best way to promote lifetime activity now. That's huge. That is so huge. Some of you haven't been around the field long enough, but before it was, I don't buy into what you're talking about, so I'm going to focus on mine. Now we're all talking about the best way to do this physical literacy. And that's one of the beauties of the term. It brings us, not much has changed really. If you look at the term of what physically educated and what physically literate, not much changed. But if it helps unify the field, I'm all about it. And I think that's one of the things that we need to really look into. Progress and build. So early on, you can, and this is, some of the other models use this approach as well, is you do skills just by themselves. Then you do it with a partner. Then you do combinations. You have modified games. Some call it scaffolding, some call it progressions, whatever you want to call it. That it's not just skills and then play the game. Okay, here we go. We're going to bounce the basketball back and forth. I'll never forget this. We did this in high school. We worked on bounce passing and these other random passes with somebody in front of you, no defender. And they said, okay, now we're going 5-on-5. And you know what happened to our passing skills. I mean, those of us that had never played before, I had played, but I had friends that hadn't. Their passing skills went to just heaving it to get it to your partner or your teammate. And there was no progression, no lead up to that. So that needs to be a part of this as well. And again, I said it before, I think this allows, when you look at exposing to a variety, it allows you to use a lot of different models and a lot of teaching styles that will help. So I just spent 36-7 minutes talking about a model and basically curriculum. And I want to just touch on this quickly and be a little, not probably too ginger. I'm not. What I don't want teachers to do is we worry so much about our curriculum and so much about our models, and teaching's not there. And I'm just trying to say this gingerly, but the best way to say it is I see a lot of things on Twitter. I go out to see a lot of schools. I see a lot of things at conferences, and it's games. 101 ways to use a polyspot to play games. And those are a dime a dozen. And effective teaching is not. And what I don't want teachers to get is to hear that, oh, we'll spend all your time worrying about your curriculum. It's great. But your curriculum is not really going to change the lives of kids. Your teaching is going to change the lives of kids. And we don't hear that and we don't think about that enough as look, I need to build relationships with my kids. This last bullet, the students you teach are far more important than the content you present. Think about any of the teachers or the parents or whomever has really motivated you to be active for the rest of your life or motivated you to do anything in life. It had nothing to do with the one quote they said or the wonderful PowerPoint or that fabulous lesson. It had to do with the relationship they built with you. So I don't want to lose sight of that. And the whole idea that you can have a fabulous curriculum that you get to deliver and be effective because you've taken the time to get to know your students. And this is the second bullet, kids don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. That's the best way to show a human being that you care about them is know their name and smile. It's unbelievable what it does. So again, I think the content curriculum is extremely important, but I think our teaching, we have to remember that, because when we get to the bottom line and when we start developing curriculum, and there's a variety of ways in this particular slide here, there's a variety of ways to get from Central America all the way around to the southern part of Africa. There's a bazillion, infinite number of ways to get there. How you choose to do that is up to you. But we know that the X is promoting lifelong activity, and that's what I hope that we're seeing, because we want our legacy to be that we have kids that have a positive feeling about activity, competent in a few select physical activities, and know the facts of activity of wellness. And that, I hope, is what yields students that are physically active youth to mature into active adults. That's what we want. And it's hard to get to that at times because we have so many other things. But I think if we can really focus on that, that's how we're going to, our field is going to benefit the most. And I think that's how we thrive, because I think if we don't do that, we really are going to struggle as a field, because we have to have this common goal and really focus at that. So with that, I told you I was going to go back to the Tozzle, and I didn't do it the whole time. So I'm going to go to the Tozzle and see what kind of questions we have. Were there any on here, Naomi? Tips for questioning survey.
Sorry, I'm unmuting myself.
No, the tips for questioning surveying, that's just going to depend on, hopefully you have an idea. The question from Adam in Australia. Are you in Australia, I think, Adam? Anyway, relationships are huge. Oh, no, I scroll down here.
It's difficult because people start typing things.
Yeah, what you guys, I'm just kidding. He asked basically if you have tips for surveying students. Yes, what we have done in the past is we would just write the activities you like. I saw some teachers on Twitter recently were doing skateboarding. That's awesome. I've never skateboarded in my life, but I think it's a great activity. But find out what they like and then pick what you can teach. If they want to do skateboarding and you don't have access to skateboarding, you're not obviously going to offer that. But find out what they like. Try and categorize them. What I did here obviously was in a dream world. I categorized it pretty streamlined. And you could also, if you want to push students' limits, you could put team sports and then have have some fitness activity in there that doesn't fit with that. I think that will help maybe push them outside their limits a little bit. Again, if that's something you don't want to deal with, then you wouldn't do that. But I think that's the key of that, is making sure you know what you can offer and what each person's comfortable teaching, and then what they can teach. And most good teachers will tell you, I can figure out how to teach anything. I mean, one of the exercises we do with our university students is most of them have never been exposed to lacrosse. So we bring them in one day, they've never had, as they say, we tell them in 20 minutes, you're going to teach a lacrosse lesson, and good luck. And they have to find out information. They have to find out how to teach skills. They have to do the progressions. That's not what you would expect because they only have 20 minutes. But the point with that is we want them to be comfortable in teaching, that they can take any activity and break it down. I'm trying to scroll back through these.
It's difficult. Yeah, so if you have any questions for Aaron right now, even if you asked them previously and they weren't answered, now's a good time to type them in, just because it's a little bit easier to get them as they come.
Sorry, Adam. Adam's in Saudi Arabia. Sorry.
Yes.
Check him out on Twitter. He just went skydiving recently. And I don't want to forget make sure you put your, if you're on here, put your Twitter account in here as well. And I said this on the one before, is I think the best part about this is continuing the conversation and following the people that have the same interests in the same conversation, because that will continue beyond this 45 minutes of talking and allow the discussion to continue.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the thing about Twitter too is that's how, the whole Phys Pedagogy team met each other, and how the whole Phys Ed Summit kind of came about. So it's a great place to connect. I shared on the Tozzle Jared Robinson's at Mr. Robo's 14-day Twitter challenge. So if you're kind of nervous for how to get started or don't really know how to do that, go to that, because that's going to kind of lead you into day by day you do something new. So it's a pretty cool thing.
Question from Mike Rose. I don't know where you're from, Mike, but it sounds like you're from Texas. I taught in Texas. The biggest class we had was 55. 85 is not, I don't know if you have an aide or if you have anybody to help you. There's not a lot of easy, there's not a magic bullet to it. That's going to limit what you can do, especially equipment and space and things like that. I guess the thing would be to make a list, and I've talked about curriculum development on some other webinars and things, but make a list of what you can do and what you think you can do effectively, and then organize it. Again, if anybody has any ideas for 85 students, that's a tough one. And I'm guessing you probably don't have ample equipment for 85. And if you did, you don't have a big space. So the biggest I had was 55 on basically a volleyball court. It was the size of our gym. So it was a little congested, but they were all in first grade, so that wasn't too bad. Naomi, I'm not Cassandra. I'm not sure what you mean by stream. Is that like a season or one sport?
That's what I'm getting.
Okay.
Yes, I think.
I think that's the beauty of this is exposing them, just because, again, it's part of how you don't just say you're going to do this. I don't care whether you like it or not. It's how you present it as a PE teacher. But this, they have it in PE so that you're forcing them to be exposed to other activities that they've never been exposed to. I'm not kidding you. Here in Lexington, I was just at a school and they had soccer balls out, and the teacher said, hustle over and get a ball, and you're going to be dribbling. And they all dribbled with their hands, picked up a soccer ball and dribbled with their hands. So they had never been exposed. They don't know that. You have to force them to do that.
Yeah, and I think, with the two, it's, a well-rounded, I think of it, from an athlete's perspective, a well-rounded athlete, rather than just one, doing one type of sport, but it's with our kids as well. It's, learning different things. It's a well-rounded program is kind of how I feel this multi-activity model is. So I really,
and the nice part is you have, I guess I look at almost the multi-activity model as almost more of an organizational thing than it is, TGFU has to do with the teaching and that kind of thing. And it's more of a curriculum development type tool, and then you can use other models within it. But again, I know enough about models to be dangerous, so I might be misrepresenting the concept there.
Folks, if you have any other questions for Aaron, add them in here. And yeah, we'll answer if we have some time. So we have, we still have 15 more minutes or so. So we still have some time.
One that just came up, Ryan. I don't know where you're from, Ryan Fahey, Fahey. Gymnastics unit specifically, I would do. I'm assuming elementary. That's a good question. I don't know why gymnastics disappears in middle school, but we usually will have throughout a year 4 or 5 gymnastics weeks. So we do a variety of activities. With that, we include everything in gymnastics from balancing to animal movements to typical weight transfer, forward roll, partner balances, those types of things. Not every day, not every time, but when I have students, I might do an animal movement on the mat with 2 or 3 of them, and then we would go to some balance activities, and then maybe a pencil roll, and then a log roll, and traditional some educational gymnastics things, and then come back to that throughout the year. And some of the things we do, we use balance benches. I don't know if you're familiar with balance benches. A fabulous tool that hasn't been used much. It's a European thing, but we use those as well. And we use them during challenge courses, which we do during fitness, but it leads up to balancing on a balance beam. So I think that's kind of, I don't know if I answered your question, but that's how I would answer it. What's Adam saying here? If we can give Adam, you said it probably much better than I could. That if we can, he had exposed students to touch rugby and they've never been exposed to it and they loved it. If we can expose them to positive experiences like that, it's so much better than I think than one activity. And that if they don't like it, well, it's a crapshoot. I kind of like the idea of a garden hose where we're just spraying, hopefully hitting get some kid wet with an activity they like, and then they'll go do it more. And if we don't expose them those opportunities, they're not going to get exposed to that. And so many of these your kids have never had a positive experience or just don't like it. And a lot of it has to do with our attitude and connecting with them as well. That's why I think this variety of activities and exposure can help tremendously. I just saw I think they're probably still doing it, but some people up north here do snowshoeing and cross-country skiing. Well, that's not really in the shape guidelines and outcomes, but it's a great activity because I think I don't know if it's this way everywhere, probably not, but in the US, it's like 55% or 60% of adults live where they were raised. So we need to expose them to the activities that people in that area do. And Adam talks about giving them a hook at the start of the lesson, something that'll, some kind of, I think Andy Vasily calls it a provocation, but a video story, something to get them hooked at, wow, this is what we're going to do.
I also like what Super Dan PE said.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. Plus, I like that Twitter handle. That's even better.
He's a big Superman fan. Yeah. Thanks, Dan. That's good. Yeah, it is. It's like it's like your basketball team that they all want to work on shooting. It's like, well, you work on shooting enough.
Yeah.
Let's work on some other things.
Exactly. Basically, like Dan said, what else can I teach you? I want to teach you something. I want you to learn something new today.
Yes.
And that's what this experience is about. Yeah.
Thanks for that, Daniel.
Yeah.
I'm going back to, were there any other questions that I missed?
Sure. Aaron, if anybody would like to get a hold of you or contact you, what is the best way to do that?
Johan, I'll get your question in a second. My email is just my last name at uky.edu. I didn't put that anywhere on this PowerPoint, did I?
That's okay.
Yeah.
We can type it in the tussle after if you want.
Well, let me try to go back through here. I think, did I put it on the front? No, nope. It's just my last name at uky.edu. And then my Twitter is just my name at Aaron Beighle. Real creative, I know. And if you follow me or reach out to me that way, I'll be more than happy to. She's standing to put it on here. I'll email. I have emailitis, so I'll get back to you pretty quickly. It's kind of a disease, but and I probably check my phone more than I should in life too. So I'll get back to you pretty quickly. I'm more than happy to help and share. Johan asked about the research on this. Part of the issue is how you define your model, and that hasn't been really well done in the literature. The first study I showed, I had it written on my desk. My desk is a mess. I'm getting ready for a study. But that was that study that showed exposure was key. exposing was key to get kids to be active for a lifetime. And that was I believe that was a longitudinal study. So they went around and watched for a long time. Went with kids for over a course of time and found that they were much more active later in life as they became more active, as they were exposed to more activities.
All right, so if anybody has any more questions, you can add it to the Tozzle. And Aaron, you can check that out whenever you have the opportunity to, or email Aaron and he can, answer those questions for you and share some information with you. Any last words that you have, Aaron?
No, I just thank you for being PE teachers and being teachers. I know it's the best job in the world. Sometimes you don't feel that way, but I think it is absolutely the best job in the world. And I wouldn't change anything about what I've done, despite some of the marginalization we've had. And I thank you for choosing to do this as a career.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And the more, we can get together and, I think Dan just said, I feel very isolated. I think this helps that, having these conferences help that, and getting connected helps that. Cause I was that teacher too. I taught in Saskatchewan, Canada, and I was the only PE teacher, and I taught 93 kids in a school K through 12. And, I was the only person. I was isolated. I was by myself. So,
and at least I know Daniel's not anymore, but he used to be, and most schools are, where the gym is physically removed from the school. So you are literally on an island.
Yes.
And in the winter, it's too cold to walk your kids out there. So those teachers just stand at the door and make them run out. So you don't even see adults throughout the day. And it's very isolating. I mean, it's just one of these things that we don't, and that's one of the models that we've tried to do here in Lexington with, is to get teachers together more often, because we want them to have that community face to face. But then if you don't have that somewhere, then obviously these Phys Ed Summit and Twitter and Voxer, if you're not on Voxer, get on there. It'll change your life. But I think that's something, if you're not sure how to do Voxer, go to voxerpe.com. They'll explain everything to you.
Yep, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you very much, Aaron. I appreciate you giving us your time.
All right.
I know your kids are probably just bouncing, waiting for Dad to come back.
No, I think they're jumping rope in the basement below me.
Oh, perfect. Oh, doing some activity. I like it.
Exactly.
They can keep themselves busy.
Exactly.
So thank you so much for presenting. I really appreciate it, and I know everybody else that has jumped in as well. Really enjoyed it. We had about 40 or so people that were viewing live that I could see, so that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And we just want to say thank you to everybody else who attended the Phys Ed Summit today. We say the Phys Ed Summit is free. Yes, it is free, but you do have to give up your time, which is important. And we appreciate that you give up your time, because time for teachers and for, folks that have families and just want to keep a balance is very important. And we appreciate that you gave, us your time today. So thank you very much for joining us. I put a link to the survey. So go in there, fill it out, let us know how it went, give us some feedback, and then we will email you a certificate of attendance. It's not going to be automatic, just the way we have it set up right now. We'll probably push it out once a day. Maybe right now we'll push it out as fast as we can, but you should get your certificate of attendance within a week. If you don't, send us an email to physedagogy@gmail.com, and we'll try and get back to you as soon as possible with that certificate so you can get credit for it. So thank you very much. I hope everybody has a great day, and have a great rest of your week and rest of your school year.
Thank you, Naomi.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, and join us this summer for another 24-hour summit. So we don't know the date yet or the weekend, but it should be in August sometime. So stay tuned for that. So the 5.0, because that's Summit 5.0. We're on a roll here. All right, everybody. Have a great day. Bye.